This is the VOA Special English Education Report. President Obama wants the United States to have the world's highest rate of college graduates. But his administration also wants stronger rules for colleges that operate for profit. Career colleges receive billions of dollars from taxpayers through student loans. The Education Department says some of that goes to waste and leaves students in debt for educations of little or no value. To receive federal aid, career colleges must prepare students for what the law calls gainful employment in a recognized occupation. 2 tests are proposed to see if they do. One would measure the relationship between debt loads and how much students earn after they complete a program. The other would measure the rate at which all students repay their loans, whether they complete the program or not. Programs that fail these tests could be restricted or blocked from federal student aid. The Education Department says for-profit colleges and training programs are important. In 2008, they had close to 2 million students, nearly 3 times more than in 2000. Last year, the 5 largest received more than 3/4 of their money from federal student aid. And that amount did not include other forms of government aid. Yet officials say for-profit colleges may be less supervised than other schools. They also point to reports of highly aggressive marketing. For every 100 graduates of for-profit colleges, 18 fail to repay their federal student loans. That compares to 5 graduates of public colleges and universities. The department is now collecting public comments on a number of negotiated rules. Some would require career colleges to release their graduation and job placement rates. The goal is to publish a final rule by November. The Career College Association called the debt-to-earnings proposal unwise, unnecessary, unproven, and unlawful. The group says it has found that students in higher-priced programs are more likely, not less likely, to repay their students' loans. It says the move could end programs serving 300,000 students. Female and minority students would face the most harm, it says, as they are more likely to attend career colleges. The association also points to shrinking budgets for community colleges. Its president, Harris Miller, says students need more information, not fewer choices. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report in Special English. Children starting school in Georgia this year have another reason to be excited. They are receiving computers they can take home with them. At a public school in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi, children are receiving netbook computers. Educational officials say the children will learn more and develop better computer skills if they can bring the technology home. The hope is that computer technology will become second nature to these children. The Georgian government is paying for the project. It has spent about $5.5 million on 50,000 Georgian-made netbooks. The computers are being made in an algorithm computer factory based in the capital. But the netbook computers are only part of the education upgrade. Georgia is also offering what it calls future classes. They have been opened in 80 schools around the country. These classes are fully equipped with modern technology. There are no pens, pencils, or notebooks. Future classes use interactive smartboards and monitors instead. So students learn and study using this up-to-date technology. Students also can study the electronic version of past lessons without going back through stacks of papers. All future classes are connected to each other digitally, so students can compare work and chat about the subjects they study. The Deputy Minister for Education says the netbooks are not meant to replace school books. She says they just want to give children an up-to-date and relevant education. And she adds that schools need to prepare children for modern-day challenges by exposing them to modern-day technologies. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. About 10% of spending on primary and secondary education in the United States comes from the federal government. For 10 years now, federal law has tied this spending to student performance. States have been required to show progress through yearly testing. But states say testing tells only part of the story about efforts by schools and students to improve. So the Obama administration has eased the limits on states in measuring performance. The western state of Colorado, for example, has a new assessment method. This new measurement tool is called the Colorado Growth Model. The idea is to show academic growth, just not achievement on tests. It combines test scores, family income levels, school size, the ethnicity of the student, and many other factors. Bill Bonk is one of the creators of the Colorado Growth Model. He says, "It's a very fancy calculation. We're very proud of it." The results from schools across the state are shown online on a graph. The graph shows a school's average score on standardized tests as well as its academic growth. Josh Smith is a principal of a middle school in a network of public charter schools called West Denver Prep. Charter schools are publicly funded but not operated the same as traditional public schools. Mr. Smith says he likes to show his students this graph so they can see their school's progress. Many of his students have parents who do not speak English. He likes to play word games with his students to help them expand their vocabulary. 8th grader Juan Celtero says names like these and studying hard have raised his expectations for himself. He says he wants to be an electrical engineer. The teachers really want you to learn, he says. They give you support and talk you through things. On average, students enter 6th grade at West Denver Prep performing below grade level. But 3 years later, most are outperforming other students across the state. The new assessment method shows that each year, the average West Denver Prep student learns more math than 94% of all the students in Colorado. Reading and writing scores also show growth. Josh Smith says the students have to study hard to meet high expectations. But he says perhaps the most important thing they should learn is to believe in themselves. You can watch a video about West Denver Prep and the Colorado Growth Model at voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Last year, 200,000 Chinese students studied in the United States. That was a 23% increase over the previous year. The Institute of International Education in New York reports that 26,000 U.S. students were in China in 2011. They included 15,000 people studying for academic credit and 11,000 taking part in other educational activities. A program called the 100,000 Strong Initiative is trying to increase the number of Americans studying in China. The State Department launched the program in 2010. The goal is to send 100,000 students to China during a 4-year period. Last year, the nonprofit 100,000 Strong Foundation was launched. Project Pengyo is one of the groups the foundation supports. It connects American students who have lived or studied in China. Project Pengyo is based in Beijing and led by Holly Chang. She says personal ties formed while studying abroad can have an effect on relations between the United States and China. She says there is still a huge amount of misunderstanding between the two countries. The Chinese government has offered 20,000 scholarships to Americans under what is known as the U.S.-China Consultation on People-to-People Exchange. The 100,000 Strong Foundation has no official relationship with the Chinese government, but the foundation says it works closely with Chinese government officials to encourage more Americans to seek these Chinese scholarships. The goal is to give more Americans a chance to get a taste of Chinese culture. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Ballou High School in Washington might not seem the most likely school to have a lacrosse team, but lacrosse has grown beyond the popular image of a sport mainly for wealthy private schools. Ballou is a public school in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. In the past 6 years, more than 40 students have died violent deaths. Many were the result of drug violence. Ballou has just had its first year with a lacrosse team. The team is for girls. They lost every game. But their coach, Holly McGarvey, says this was also the first time they ever played. She says the goal was just to start building a foundation that we can build from and create a tradition of women's lacrosse here at Baloo. Lacrosse is a fast-moving sport, the modern version of a game played by American Indians. Teams try to make goals with a ball caught and thrown using a net at the end of a stick. School officials decided to make changes at Baloo after less than 60% of the senior class graduated in 2006. Since then, the graduation rate has improved by 10 to 15%. Raman Branch, the school principal, says one change was to increase activities after the school day. That included adding a girls' lacrosse team. Mr. Branch says Holly McGarvey was a perfect match for Baloo. She was on a national lacrosse team and a star player at Princeton University. She was in her first year of teaching. She wanted to take the lessons she learned from sports and use them in teaching biology. Coach McGarvey says the first practices for the new team were difficult. Some players got angry at one another. She helped them learn to keep their mind on the game. She remembers how excited the girls were on their way home from their first game. They had failed to score even one goal, but, she says, they were already in the mindset of what can we do better. Lacrosse player Tylashia Joyner says the sport has helped her think more about her future. She says she wants to play in college because it will keep me in shape and it will help me stay focused and want to do something. Because if you want to play a sport, you have to have your grades up. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can download MP3s of our programs and get podcasts at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and iTunes at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. An old problem is getting new attention in the United States: bullying. Recent cases included the tragic case of a 15-year-old girl whose family moved from Ireland. Phoebe Prince hanged herself in Massachusetts in January following months of bullying. Her parents criticized her school for failing to protect her. Officials have brought criminal charges against several teenagers. Judy Kuczynski is president of an anti-bullying group called Bully Police USA. Her daughter Tina was the victim of severe bullying starting in middle school in the state of Minnesota. Judy Kuczynski says her daughter was a very outgoing child, very involved in all kinds of things, and had lots of friends. But over a period of time, her grades fell completely. She developed health problems. She couldn't sleep. She wasn't eating. She had terrible stomach pains and started grinding her teeth at night. And she did not want to go to school. Bullying is defined as negative behavior repeated over time against the same person. It can involve physical violence, or it can be verbal, for example, insults or threats. Spreading lies about someone or excluding a person from a group is known as social or relational bullying. And now there is cyberbullying, which uses the internet, email, or text messages. It has easy appeal for the bully because it does not involve face-to-face contact, and it can be done at any time. The first serious research studies into bullying were done in Norway in the late 1970s. The latest government study in the United States was released last year. It found that about 1/3 of students aged 12 to 18 were bullied at school. Examples included being made fun of, pushed, spit on, threatened, or excluded from activities. Some students had their property damaged. About 4% reported being the victims of cyberbullying. The study took place in 2007. Susan Swearer is a psychologist at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and co-director of the Bullying Research Network. She says schools should treat bullying as a mental health problem to get bullies and victims the help they need. She says bullying is connected to depression, anxiety, and antisocial behavior, and bullies are often victims themselves. What can be done to prevent bullying? That will be our subject next week. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Education Report. Americans celebrated the Thanksgiving holiday on November 25th. They gathered with family and friends to share a meal. Some celebrated the holiday by telling what they are most thankful for. This holiday season, a group of student athletes in Woodburn, Oregon, has given its community something to be thankful for. The Woodburn High School boys soccer team has reached the state soccer championship playoffs for 25 straight seasons. But the Bulldogs had never won the state championship until this year. Their victory in November also represents a win for their mostly Hispanic hometown. Writer Steve Wilson spent a year recording the successes and problems of the team. He wrote a book called The Boys from Little Mexico, a season chasing the American dream. It tells about a community struggling with issues such as immigration and cultural changes. Migrant farm workers from Mexico started coming to Woodburn, Oregon about 50 years ago. Many of the workers stayed and made the town their home. So the town became known as Little Mexico. Steve Wilson thinks the Woodburn boys soccer team's continued hard work and effort to win the state championship is similar to their cultural experiences. Like many Mexican Americans, the boys on the Woodburn team faced major problems. They include poverty, a language barrier, and immigration issues. Mr. Wilson wondered if those challenges were preventing the team from reaching its goal of winning a state championship. So he decided to follow the team for an entire season. He got to know the players, coaches, and supporters. One of the players he writes about in the book is Martin Maldonado Cortez. Martin says he and the other boys on the team knew that Woodburn had a bad image. The town has a population of only 22,000 people. but it faces many of the same problems found in large cities. These include gang violence and illegal drugs. He says when the team went to play other schools, the people did not act friendly toward them. Martin says his coaches told him to show pride in his culture. They told him to make an effort to be successful in life and not just on the field. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Our programs are online with transcripts and MP3 files at voaspecialenglish.com. And you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. In May, an international conference took place in Dakar, Senegal, to find new ways to get and keep girls in school. The United Nations Children's Fund says nearly 72 million children were not in school in 2007. More than half are girls, and more than 2/3 are in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and West Asia. School attendance has improved in many areas, but the head of UNICEF, Anthony Lake, says unless we all work harder, there may still be 56 million children out of school in 2015. He says progress and economic development depend on educating girls as well as boys. Educated girls are also at lower risk of violence, abuse, and diseases like HIV/AIDS. The UN Girls Education Initiative organized the meeting of 200 scholars, aid workers, and government officials from 22 countries. The initiative was launched in Dakar 10 years ago. The aim is to bring primary school education to all girls and boys worldwide by 2015. In Senegal, the number of public schools has doubled in the last 10 years. But UNICEF's Anthony Lake said schools still lack gender equality. He said girls in one Dakar school told him about a lack of bathrooms and textbooks for them and bullying from boys. The conference centered on three main problems to getting and keeping girls in school: violence, poverty, and poor quality education. Anne-Therese Ndongjata is Education Director for UNESCO in Africa. She says donors are giving a lot of resources and civil society groups are working on access to education. The UNESCO official says schools need to modernize and improve what they teach and how they teach it. For example, she says schools should teach African children in their native languages, not just in English or French. To stay in school, experts say children must consider their education useful, and so must their parents. May Rihani from the Global Advisory Committee of the UN Girls Initiative gave an example from a life skills program in Mali. One lesson is about diarrhea. The idea is for children to go tell their mother what they learned. May Rihani says the mother would recognize that this education is important to her and to her family and would want the child to continue to go to school. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Kid Pan Alley is a nonprofit organization that holds songwriting workshops for students across the United States. The organization recently visited a school in the Anacostia area of Washington, D.C. The children presented a concert with the help of songwriter and recording artist Paul Reisler. He established Kid Pan Alley in 1999 and has worked with more than 35,000 students and produced more than 2,200 songs since that time. He says the power of music can teach children skills they might not learn in school. He believes the American educational system is focused too much on standardized tests to measure success. But Paul Reisler says we now live in a creative economy. He says his group is trying to inspire children to be creative. At Orr Elementary School in Anacostia, 95% of students come from poor families. Marlon Ray is the school's dean of students. He says some of the children have difficult lives. But he says these kids still want to strive for greatness. Jonna Turner is director of programs at the school. She says the 4th and 5th grade students are often focused on more than school. They can be important helpers for their families. They make sure food is ready when they come home and do other tasks. Yet, students are often influenced by what happens around them. A shooting took place in April directly in front of the school. Although no one was injured, the event affected the whole community. Still, Orr Elementary School has a positive, hopeful atmosphere. Marlon Ray says the workshop and concert made possible by Kid Pan Alley created good memories that will last for years. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Some women's prisons in the United States offer classes for college credit. But when the prisoners are released, they may not have much chance to continue their education. In 2000, a woman named Barbara Martinsons started a program to help these former prisoners. She established the College and Community Fellowship. Ms. Martinsons taught at Manhattan Marymount College in New York City. She has also taught college courses at a women's prison in New York State. The College and Community Fellowship provides advice to former prisoners. It also helps them gain admission to college. That process can be very difficult for anyone, let alone a person with a prison record. The group also provides financial aid to members attending college. Members of the College and Community Fellowship are called CCF Fellows. Some have earned not only college degrees, but master's degrees and a doctorate. Selena Fulford has already earned one master's degree and is working on her second. She is now an adjunct professor at the College of New Rochelle in New York State. About 70% of those in the program work full-time while studying. Nationally, 1/3 of women who have been in prison are later sent back for committing other crimes or violating the terms of their release. By comparison, almost none of the CCF fellows has been sent back behind bars. The Reverend Vivian Nixon, a minister, heads the College and Community Fellowship. She once spent time in prison for falsifying documents. She says the group helps people reclaim the goals they had for their lives before going to jail. You don't have to just accept any job at a fast food restaurant or cleaning up a hotel or cleaning up the streets, she says. As she puts it, you can still have desires and goals, and we are going to help you meet those desires and goals. About 270 people are in the program. The group holds meetings where the women talk about subjects like personal finance and developing a career, and there is a social hour. Vivian Nixon says society in general is happiest when the women do not go back to jail. But she says her greatest hope is that members of the fellowship are setting high goals for themselves and their children. We have more stories about education programs for people in or out of prison. You can find them, along with other reading and listening materials for learning English, at voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.